Hey everyone, this is Karsh from OneTap. So recently I just had a demo with a professor who's using OneTap to keep track of attendance for her classroom. So this is a very common use case that we see with OneTap where professors have been like taking roll calls, like sometimes like literally just like kind of visually looking at the students, like scanning faces and being like, hey, they're here, they're here, they're here. And what usually happens is that that process isn't scalable, so they can't really like do that for like 50 students, 60 students, because that would take up like 15, 20 minutes of class time. And another thing that we see is that sometimes teachers are just like maybe using other tools, for example, like just using like tools that have like codes and everything, or they're just using like tools that have QR codes to take care of it to take attendance. But those have issues such as like cheating. It's just basically just really easy for a student to just take a picture of the QR code as well as take the code and just send it to their friends. It's also really easy for a student to just sign in their friends. So that makes the attendance process like less credible. Sometimes people will like put quizzes and stuff like, hey, you have to answer like the question, you have to attempt it in order to get participation points. There's just, yeah, teachers are just doing lots of different types of things. One teacher I believe was also using like a professor was using QR codes from Google Forms, but he mentioned that, hey, they're just checking in from their dorm, and it's just like the data is just so messy because what ends up happening is that when you export all that data into Google Sheets, you just have this huge dump, and it's just like messy. It's like just like stuff's all over the place, and it's hard to figure out the information that you really need out of that. So yeah, so basically one tap. So that's where one tap comes in, and that's where a lot of professors, that are looking to that are looking for that little bit of a premium attendance solution. They're not satisfied with the free ones out there. They're not satisfied with forms and this with other, with other tools that are designed for quizzes and stuff. We'll come over to OneTap and we'll try out our features. So let's do a little quick demo here about how OneTap works. So we can create a list here called, let's just call it graphic design course, and then we can give it a date. And then we can make this a recurring list so it can repeat Monday through Friday. So our system automatically creates a new list. So what is a list? A list is similar to like a Google Doc, or like I guess in some sense maybe, yeah, it's just like a digital sheet that keeps track attendance all in that one place. It's just like a sign-in sheet, but a digital version of it. So when you do the recurring schedule, you'll get a new list every single day based on the schedule that you specified. So it automatically does that. And then what we'll do is we'll create that list and we'll say just check-ins for right now. We're not doing checkouts. And then afterwards, once you create that list, it's literally very simple. You hit the share button and you do share check-in link. And then you get the link right here. And this is the link that people are going to use to check in. This is so now on this side, this is what the student sees. This is all on the student side. So it's going to say search for your name or register. So a lot of professors are like, well, I don't want students to register because I'll get a bunch of duplicate profiles. People are just going to be like mistyping in names and stuff, and it just makes the whole process, it makes the whole process messy. So you go to the profiles tab here, and this is where we can bring in student names and student information. You just literally drag and drop an Excel sheet here that has these headers here. So name, email, birthday, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop an Excel sheet into my account, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. So I've got my Excel file here, which has the name, the ID number column, and the enrolled course. You don't need these other columns. You literally just need name. That's the only thing that's important. Any other things such as email addresses or ID numbers and all that is just all like bonus. So import test professors. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to our dashboard and I'm going to go ahead and import that file. As soon as we put the file in here, it will say, hey, we found these columns here, and then here are the fields that it should map into. So we don't really have a field called enrolled course, but it's obviously, it can be imported as a custom field. And same thing with the ID numbers. And as soon as we hit continue, so I'm going to map this over to, you can also map that as check-in code, but right now I'm just going to do it this way. And as soon as you go ahead and import that, what will happen is all these students will get all their information imported. And just for an example right here, I'm going to pick like this person. I'm going to just set their code to the same thing as their ID number. And you can also just Excel too. And as soon as we've done that, what we can do is we can go over to the list tab. And this is where we're going to start taking attendance here. So you go over to the list side, and then what we do is we do add profiles, and we can add all the people here into this list. But even better than that, you don't have to do any sort of setup or any sort of like pre-registration work. So we just go ahead and we hit the share button, and then we do share check-in link. And this will give us the link again that we can go to. So now back to our link, this is what the student would see. we can start typing in names here, and then we can start looking at the auto suggestions here. So we go over here and then we pick a name. So we pick Aaliyah, and see how the names see how we start getting auto suggestions here for Aaliyah, Aaliyah or Ali, and then we hit continue here, and literally as simple as that, you've like as a student you've checked in. You can also add notes here, for example, like if there's something that you want to let the professors know, take a photo or something, do that as well. This QR code pass is a individual private QR code pass, so don't worry about that. That's if you were doing a physical kiosk at the classroom, you can go ahead and scan that as well. So we literally go back to the beginning and then they can go ahead and check out as well. Same process, but we're just doing check-ins for right now. Now, you probably want to get rid of that register button. Before that, actually, you probably want to see the check-ins that have taken place and then like the timestamps. So we have Aaliyah here who checked in, and then we're gonna check in Caleb as well. Register and check in, and done. So simple as that. So we've done like check-ins as Caleb and Aaliyah. And there's a few more things that usually come up, which is going to be like, how do we prevent students from checking in from home? So obviously this was pretty simple. We can go ahead and like print this. We can like put up on our lecture slides, and anyone can, people can just go check in, but we don't want them checking in from home. So that's where some of our new features come in. So one, what you can do is you can enable check-in restrictions, and you can say time restrictions. So you probably don't want people checking in at any time of the class. So you can add some restrictions here. So for example, if I go over here and if I say 5 p.m. is whenever this course starts, and then maybe let's just say it started at 4:50, and I'm trying to really make sure that students are early, and right now it's 5 p.m. for me, so I'm just going to go ahead and put it as 5 p.m. And simple as that. So we just go ahead and save it, and then if we go back to our link, what's going to happen is that as soon as the students scan it, it's going to say, hey, you're outside of the check-in restriction. You can't do anything. And then you're outside of the time restriction. And then you can also add location restriction here. So if you don't want students checking in, for example, from home, so we can go over here and we can like put the university campus down. So for example, university, that right there. And so let's just say, for example, I only want students checking in from campus. So I can go ahead and adjust this location here and make it bigger or smaller, like literally limit it to like a single building or like few buildings. Just keep in mind, if you make it too accurate, you might not, some of the devices might still they might not pick up on location pretty well. So as soon as we reload the list here, it's going to say, hey, you're outside of the check-in restrictions. You can't check in here. It will also show them, if they zoom out, it will also show them their real location. And what we do is easy as that. We've added in a check-in restriction for time and for location. For right now, I'm going to go turn those off. And we do have an exciting new feature, which is called check-in through an IP address. So if you check in once from an IP address on a phone, you can't check in again. So this is super cool because typically a smartphone that's connected to a router on the network or on the cellular tower has a unique IP address. So this will really prevent students from checking in each other. So it'll prevent them from checking in their friends or other classmates. And so if I go over here to the check-in link and if I reload it, it's gonna tell me that like, hey, you already checked into this list from this IP address since I've already done 2 check-ins. So I can't check in the third person. If I try to check in Chloe, I can't do that. There's a few other things that professors would like to probably see over here, which is like the fact that like you can hide the registration button because you don't want that registration button to be, you don't want students to be creating new profiles and stuff. I'm going to disable all this, and the register button right here that you see that where you can register new profiles can also be turned off by going into the settings page and turning off the registrations. You just profile, so which means that like if you set it to closed, it's only the people who are already on the list can just check in. So it's like, hey, an RSVP, it's like, hey, you're enrolled in the course, so you're the only person that can check in. But if you try to set it to profiles, any one of your profiles can check in. So that gets rid of that register button. Now, after we did the video, so we talked about that. Now, the second thing that or like the last thing that professors talk about is like, how do we do check-in codes? So how do we have codes here instead of names? So student ID numbers. So in this case, for example, Leah has the code 104, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset the list, and I'm going to check in Aaliyah with that code 104. So we got the check-in link now, and we're going to go over to the settings page and hit check-in code instead of the name. And easy as that, we've allowed check-in codes to be used instead of the name. So now if I go here and if I type in 104, which is Aaliyah's code, it should show up as Aaliyah, and Aaliyah can just check in instead of using name. So that also kind of makes it a little bit harder because students have to know their ID numbers, and it's not easy enough to just find names and just check people in. I guess the last thing is like, Well, there's two more things. One of them is that how do we let students see their own attendance history? That's also a common question that we get. So whenever you go through the check-in process, you've done your code. What will happen is that it will give you an attendance history button right here where you can look at the attendance history and you can see when you checked in, how many times you checked in as a student. You can also turn this feature off from the settings menu there. And then the last thing is that how would you, that people always ask, professors always ask us, how do I pull the reports? How do I figure out what's going on? Like how many people have checked in, when they checked in, etc. So it's pretty easy to do that. You just hit the export attendance button and you can get a report for this entire list and you can look at who checked in that day. You can also go to the list report and look at it by course. So it'll give you a table there of like who's checked in and like when they checked in the individual days of the class. And then the profiles report, which will give you all the students that have ever checked in and then the number of times they've checked in. So let's look at a few of these reports. The very first report that we'll be looking at is going to be the single list report. So as soon as you hit the export attendance button and you'll say download this list, you're going to get a report for only that day. So 8-21. So as soon as we go over here to the list report, we're going to see that we just see all the names of the people on the list. We just see that the total number of people are 3. And then we're going to see like the email, all these columns are empty, the code, as well as the fact that they've checked in and also when they checked in. So those are the important columns, if they've checked out, when they've checked out. And it also shows you some more information such as like who checked them in, like was it done, what IP address was it done through, was it done through the dashboard, was it done through the public link, and then the user that did it. So if it was like a faculty or staff that did the check-in. And then any other custom fields that's associated with that profile will also show up here. So such as their enrolled course, ID numbers, etc. As well as check-in notes as well. And the next report that we're going to look at is the lists report. So if you go over to the export attendance tab and then you hit the lists report, what will happen is that you can select the course here, so graphic design course, and then you can download everything. And that would look like this. It would have the same type of name as well as the custom fields there, but it will show you the total check-ins for that person in this course, the total times they've missed the check-in, which means they were on the list, but they never checked in. And then it's going to show you the total check-ins and checkouts for individual days. So 8/21, 8/19, 8/18, etc. So it's going to break it down by the number of days, and then you can look at the totals here as well. Now, the last report that we have is the profiles report. Well, the full report is the last one, but the profiles report will show you all the profiles, which are all the students. It will show you how many times they've checked in and then how many times they've checked out and then when they were last seen, as well as like for each course, it will say how many times they've been seen inside that course. And then it's got the custom fields here as well. Now for the full export, we'll go over here and we'll hit the export attendance and do full report here and then just do all time. You can also put these by date ranges, but as an example here, we're going to see the names of the people that have checked in and also the list they've checked into. So like 8/21 or was it like a different day? We're going to see the course name right here and we're going to see the fact that they've checked in and then the date that they checked in. This is pretty powerful, as well as you can look at the link that they used to check in, the IP addresses and all that. This is pretty powerful because you can put this into a pivot table and then you can do all sorts of stuff like identify students who checked in late or identify students for like across a bunch of different courses. So that makes it super powerful with pivot table on Google Sheets. Yeah, that's pretty much it for how OneTap works. This is like a simple use case for professors that a lot of professors use this for. Just to recap, we're creating lists, we're creating profiles, we're creating a check-in process with check-in code, and we're adding some restrictions there. It's just the basics, but it's something that a lot of professors just value, just the simplicity of it, as well as the data that comes in. So it makes it super, super simple and easy that you don't have to sit down and flip through pages of paper or go through like Excel to figure out how many times people have checked in.